Hello and welcome back to Better Every Day, the podcast. I've never said it like that before. It sounded good.
Versus something else?
I don't know. It's good to see you, Darren.
It is great to be here, John.
Excited to continue our conversation. Hey, if you're listening today and you just chimed in, go back and listen to our last episode. This is a two-parter, and we are continuing our conversation around the 7 habits of highly effective people today.
We are jumping into the archives of arguably the book, and the set of concepts that changed both of our lives.
You know, I when I look at this binder that you've got sitting in front of us right now from your days with Stephen Covey, it reminds me of like the old Atari platform, and I'm seeing the 80s and 90s here in this room.
There's something just nostalgic about that.
Yeah.
So for those that haven't listened to our part 1 of the 7 habits, we felt compelled to resurrect.
Yeah.
Not that it needs our help, but we felt compelled to resurrect this content because it's been so impactful. And, I spent probably 10 years facilitating the 7 habits. And this was my facilitator binder. It tells you exactly what to do through each section.
There's like overhead projector screens and everything in here.
If anybody can find an overhead projector, we can talk through the goose and the golden egg. I've got a great slide on that.
Oh, man.
Well, what we want to do today, John, is continue on. So we spent time in our last podcast talking about a personal victory.
Yeah.
And that was, what it takes to actually, again, control, master, realize that this is your life.
Yeah.
And you need to be in control of it. And we talked about the 3 habits that made up sort of the private victory, which was be proactive, begin with the end in mind, and put first things first. But I would like to say that, Covey leadership, or Franklin Covey now, talks about this from the standpoint, this whole 7 habits, they look at it as the maturity continuum.
Yeah, I love that phrase.
I do too. I just love both words. I guess I didn't realize I was immature until I got older.
You'll probably say that 15 years from now too, when you look back on today.
It's what my father-in-law says.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
My favorite saying from my dad, I don't usually quote my dad a lot.
No, you don't.
But my favorite saying is, you can't put an old head on young shoulders. He used to tell me that a fair amount. That was probably when I was telling him I was right about something that I wasn't right about.
Wow. That reminds me of the old wine and new wineskins conversation as well. I love that.
Maybe that's where he got it from.
Probably. I like it. The maturity continuum to me is about getting better every day. I mean, it's about being able to see what you're doing in life as linear. Like, I should be getting better. Reminds me of my grandmother. She was almost 90, I think, when she passed away. One of the most just beautiful hearted servant people I've ever been around. And I remember one time I was telling her, just like, there are older people that just get grumpy as they get older. And I don't understand why she doesn't get grumpy. And she said, well, the older you get, if you continue to mature, you realize that there are fewer and fewer things in life that matter. And
that you're right about, probably.
Yeah, right. And even if you are right, that even why would I ruin a relationship over that? Why would I? And so she understood the maturity continuum in a really practical way, which was, the older I get, the quieter I should get. The older I get, the less things I have that really push my buttons. And the older I get, the more I listen and the less I speak. And the more content I am with that sort of a life. And to me, when I hear maturity continuum, I think of that.
I've been spending a lot of airplane time lately watching Morgan Freeman.
Yeah, me too. You got me into that.
And
the story of God.
It's on,
was it HBO?
No.
I can't remember now.
I actually downloaded it on Prime Video, but it was done by National Geographic.
Oh, it was National Geographic.
Yeah.
That's right.
And there's 3 seasons. And I can't help but to think of Morgan from this maturity perspective.
Yeah. Open-minded.
He just goes and listens.
Yeah.
And he travels all over the globe listening to different people's search for God and meaning, and
without an agenda, without his own presuppositions about their life and their.
And I sit there and I think that he reminds me a lot of Stephen Covey, actually, just in the way that they embrace listening to people and making people feel heard.
Yeah. My mom says the older I get, the more I feel like I don't know anything. To me, that's part of the maturity continuum too, is to go, I should hold loosely these things, because the older I get, the more I realize I was not right about that thing. And so maybe the things I think I know now aren't.
Well, I mean, that's what that's what our podcast is about today. It's so the second 3 of the 7 habits. So we talked about the first 3 in our last podcast.
The private victory.
The private victory. We're going to talk about the public victory.
Explain what the perspective is on a public victory. What does he mean by that?
The private victory was about realizing that it's you.
Just inside you.
Right. The public victory essentially says there's something bigger than just you. And it's everyone else.
Yeah.
And it's your ability to impact, influence, function in society or societies. And this isn't just about you. There's something more. And how do you, yes, you've learned how that it is your choice, that you should begin with the end in mind and you should put first things first. But then you have to interact with somebody besides yourself. So and
you're ready to at that point.
In my case, maybe it was my spouse.
Yeah.
And again, we said it last time. My first foray into the 7 habits or introduction was in marriage counseling, I don't know, 30-some years ago. I'll have been married 40 years in a few months.
That's crazy, Darren.
I know. Michelle and I were talking about that. And we were just talking about it the other day. I was like, do you realize we have 40 years? And then she said, do you realize how long we've been together? Because we dated for
like middle school or something.
Yeah, she was 14 when we started dating. Wow. So yeah, it's pretty crazy. So the 4th habit is this concept of think win-win.
Yeah.
And we hear this in business a lot. It needs to be win-win.
Yeah. It's where it came from.
Yeah.
Actually, that phrase.
Yeah. But it came from here.
Yeah.
So what's your take on win-win?
Oh man, the win-win thing for me, he talks about it, high trust relationships in this. When I hear win-win, I immediately think about something you and I have talked about, maybe never on the podcast, but we've talked about it a lot, in that sense that there is a winner and loser in every situation. And in order for me to win, you have to lose. Whether it's faith and somehow you're going one place and I'm going another, and if you're wrong, you go there, and if I'm right, I go here, and we create this polarizing world.
We always need this win-lose.
Why do we need to win? And I mean, I understand why everybody wants to win, but why does someone need to lose?
Yeah.
And the same thing happens in politics. We can't all win in America. Somebody has to lose. And the thought that I would enter the world after a private, rebirth of these first 3 habits, with this presupposition, this assumption that everyone can win, that in order for me to be successful, it doesn't require someone else to have to pay a price.
Our culture is not. We're just not raised that way for whatever reason. It
bucks up against capitalism. It bucks up against, in a lot of different ways, our politics, our religion, and so we have to buck the system, the passive system that we grow up with. We have to look it in the face and disagree with it. I
was listening to Richard Rohr just the other day. I think I sent you the link to that, but he talks about this whole idea that we're raised with, which is dualism.
Dualism is the word.
And somebody has to win, somebody has to lose.
Yeah.
I mean, look around, whether it's the news you're watching on TV or the politics on the globe, not just in Washington, but in the globe, it's all dualistic.
Yeah.
Somebody has to win, somebody has to lose.
And it's almost as though that belief is a vapor in our lives that permeates everything if we're not careful. If we're living passively, if we're just getting through the day, our survival instinct is to believe that even subconsciously, if Darren and I are in a fight, I have to win and Darren has to lose, or I didn't really win. Or in my marriage, this is why this was so powerful for marriage. It took a marriage counselor to go, hey, you guys can both win. In fact, that's the point of marriage, right? Is that you're winning together. Well, the same thing true in business. But if we're not careful, we begin to see adversarial relationships everywhere instead of seeing that every single relationship we have is an opportunity for a win-win.
I don't even know if we recognize that dualism in ourselves.
Yeah.
That there is this constant voice in our head that's win-lose.
Is that part of the maturity continuum that we begin to see that?
Yeah.
And notice, recognize it, and begin to call it out in ourselves.
I think that's what I like so much about Morgan Freeman's series, The Story of God. It's just the way he travels the globe, and he's always in a posture of win-win.
Yeah.
And people, I realize he's a movie star, but people are just so genuinely engaged with him. It's, I mean, it's like, if I have to begin with the end in mind, that's how I want to be seen.
This idea of high trust relationships is so relevant right now. We're hearing about quiet quitting. We're hearing about companies that are putting monitors on their computers of their employees so they can see where they're at and make sure they're working, and employees that are buying mouses that move independently so they can look like they're working on these monitors. And this high trust relationship issue is such a relevant topic right now. It has never been more relevant than it is now. And the gap that we see in small business culture and business culture in general right now is, I believe, directly related to the inability of leaders inside of organizations to see the world as a win-win opportunity. And they consistently build a culture around winners and losers. And if one person wins, someone else has to lose.
Man, I think this one's, when you start thinking about a public victory, this one's huge. And it's a mindset everywhere around us, reinforces the dualistic nature of everything. I mean, everything that you watch, like I said, our politics, everything is just dualism.
So this think win-win is the first of the public-facing habits, and it's the fourth habit overall. The fifth is seek first to understand, and then to be understood. Almost sounds like some sort of an ancient wisdom writing.
I told you this one was the one during marriage counseling that was probably the most significant. Yeah. Because think about it for a second. You're in a spat with your spouse. You want to be heard.
Yeah.
I've read other books where it says there's no need to be heard because you're playing the same record over and over again, right? It's just constant. It's just on repeat.
Yeah.
But when Stephen, I remember watching Stephen deliver this because I actually took the 7 habits from Stephen, and that was amazing. A special.
There has to be very few people who.
It was a special thing. Privilege. But when he talked about this particular habit, he related it back to an Indian tradition, and they had I think they called it a talking stick.
Yeah. I've heard of it. Yeah, I remember the conversation. It's a talking stick.
Yeah, and what would happen was when you were having a discussion with somebody or a debate, maybe that culture would take that talking stick and they would give it to the other person first, and that other person was not to give it back until they felt heard. Yeah, that's different than being heard. They had to have felt heard, like you understood what they're saying. That doesn't mean you agreed with it. It means they felt understood.
Mm.
I mean, imagine if we had a talking stick in Washington, D.C. today, how life might be different, or in our marriages.
And you're not allowed to take the stick from someone.
Not allowed. Don't say anything. You can't say anything.
You're not allowed to take the stick. It has to be given to you.
Right.
I mean, what a posture for a great leader in this culture right now.
Seek
to walk into
first
a meeting,
to understand.
To walk into a meeting and not feel like your role is to be understood, but it's to first understand.
Yeah.
Would be life changing.
Do you know how hard? I practiced this a lot back then. It was hard. It was hard to sit there and listen to your spouse to the point that, in my case, she felt understood.
Yeah.
Because you want to talk.
Yeah.
You want to say, but you're wrong.
And I have a gift and a curse in my life, and it's the ability to articulate. I can speak. Right now, if you gave me a topic, I can talk about it. I think it's partly from preaching early on, but it's also just part of my personality. And my wife is gifted in so many more ways than I am, but that's not her gift. So if we're not careful, I will win every fight. Every argument we have, I can win because I will keep the talking stick. And she will give it to me because that's not her thing. And so for me, we had to learn early on that I have to talk half of what I want to talk. Mom used to say, I'm sure somebody else said it, but I heard her say it, that you have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. You're supposed to listen twice as much as you talk.
Makes me think of the Broadway show Hamilton. You've seen that, right?
Yeah.
And there's that one song, or he keeps saying, talk less, listen more, talk less.
Listen more. That's right. Yeah. And I mean, I think that's what I hear most in this for me is I verbally process everything. So if you ask me a question, man, there's nothing better than you asking me a question because now I can just spew and with your permission, but I do it all the time. And when I get passive, when I just start surviving life, I just talk all the time. Mm-hmm. And it completely trumps whoever's around me. And it causes me to be in a win-lose relationship with them. So to me, these two build on each other.
They do. And, we talked maybe 2 or 3 episodes ago about the emotional bank account, which was another Covey concept. And really what the emotional bank account was all about was, the trust that was in a relationship, and whether it was positive or negative. Yeah. And if you think about being in a win-lose, again, I'm going to go back and just think about it from my spouse's perspective. Mm-hmm. If it's me win, her lose, I'm taking from her emotional bank account. Mm-hmm. If it is me over talking her, which I'm certainly capable of doing, I can talk louder and faster and in some respects maybe even more articulate about certain topics. All that does is bankrupt the bank account when I do that. So what we're talking about is a public victory. And this is not public like in your community.
Yeah.
This could just be in your relationship with your spouse or your children. But it is all your public, everything outside of you, relationships.
Reminds me the 5 most misunderstood words in immature adults. I think this was a Patrick Lencioni quote. He said, when you get mature, you understand the 5 most important words as a mature adult, and that is, it's not all about you. Mm. And if you live your whole life, and we all know people that live their entire life without that understanding, they believe that it is all about them. Yeah. When this is part of the maturity continuum, and I think this is where it starts to really sink into people that the world and the peace and the joy and the hope that we all want is best sought after together. And that's really his 6th point. And the third of this public victory is, he called it synergize.
Right.
Which has actually started a whole nother buzzword, the idea of synergy. I mean, you even saw that in like conferences from businesses and stuff for a long time. This all came from him coining this word, synergize.
You know, if you think about what we're talking about here, it is the 7 habits of highly effective people. So when you get a private victory and you realize that you get to choose, and you know what you want to choose, and you put first things first, and then you work towards a public victory of thinking win-win and seeking first to understand, and then realizing that, man, working with other people where 1 + 1 = 3 and not 2, you can actually come out with a third alternative and ideas that are much better when you're synergizing with other people. This is what it means to be highly effective, right? If you get that private victory and the public victory working together, man, there's so much power in that, but so much effectiveness in that. But synergy is really about coming out with the third idea, right? I have an idea. I mean, you and I do this all the time. We go sit at our breakfast / turkey club lunch.
Sometimes one turns into another after a long day.
And we're talking and we're sharing. And I'm not trying to trump your ideas. You're not trying to trump my ideas. No pun intended there. But we're coming out with better alternative. We're synergizing.
Yeah.
And that's where the power is.
It's also where the fun is. You know, this conversation around DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, I can't help but think of it when I think of this 6th habit. I get to spend a lot of time talking to people about their culture, their business culture, and they're trying to weave in DEI as though it's some sort of a compliance problem inside of their company, as though somehow me being inclusive of everyone is this eye roll of compliance that I'm going to get in trouble for if I don't do. And they're completely missing what it means to the bottom line of their organization to include people holistically, to not just accept them, but to proactively include them. And that means on their terms. That means not equality, but equity. Not just giving everybody the same thing, but understanding everyone's individual life perspective and responding to that and accommodating that at all costs. It's not about compliance. It's not even just about creating a healthy culture. It's about creating a more effective way of doing whatever it is you're doing. It's the full inclusion of a human being.
Yeah.
It's not compliance. It's not politics. This is about being better. It's about getting more done quicker, faster, higher priorities. And if we don't see it that way, it will become an eye roll and it will hurt people. But if we do see it for what Stephen Covey saw it for, and that is the best way to be effective. Like if you're listening to this today and you're going, man, we're just missing something in an organization, just look at your synergy. Do you care about each other? Do you really believe that you're better together and holistically, not just that you're accepting of everybody, but that you're trying to include everyone's perspective and trying to seek first to understand who they are, and then be able to get the most out of their engagement, not most out of their compliance, but the most out of their engagement. And this is way ahead of DEI that he came up with this idea.
Yeah. I think back, John, when I was a small child, growing up in a small town in southern Indiana, there was what felt like to me only one perspective, and it was adult white men.
Yeah.
That was the perspective. Man, we live in a time now where we can really synergize with all kinds of different cultures, religions, ethnicities. There's just so much richness in synergizing.
And as an adult white man, I feel a deep responsibility to lead that.
I agree.
To understand the advantages I've been given, and to provide equity amongst people who haven't been given those same privileges.
So as we think about these 3 habits, interdependence is a word that Stephen used to describe this. You know, the first 3 habits we talked about was the personal victory, and he would say that you gain independence when you do that.
Yeah.
But when he talks about the public victory, he calls it interdependence. We're all dependent upon each other.
Yeah.
And there's so much more. It's so much richer when you can have interdependence, but you can't have interdependence without, a lot of people become codependent. Don't want to get into that, the psychology of any of that, because I have no idea.
Yeah.
But there's a difference between codependence and interdependence.
Yeah.
And you need that independence to choose interdependence. Yeah. It's really important.
It's profound stuff. You know, his 7th habit is encompassing and sort of, and if you see the diagram that Darren's got in front of you right now from his old book, there's this circle around all of the 6 habits we've already talked about that is intended to be the saw, sharpening the saw is the way he says it. This constant effort to create balance and to create an effort for each one of those 6 things.
Yeah, habit 7 is continually getting better. Yeah. It's better every day. It's sharpening the saw. It is the continual movement.
Yeah.
It's otherwise you look at these habits as being static.
Yeah.
You know, my proactivity today is different than it was 20 years ago. You know, I think about it different. I see it different, but that's because I've learned, I've matured. You know, the maturity continuum, I've gotten better at this over time, and maybe I see things differently as I've evolved. But this, you and I both are deeply engaged with sharpening the saw.
Yeah.
And that's reading. It's watching things. It's having personal relationships like we have, where we sit and talk about things that mean a lot to us. But this is about getting better every day.
It really is. You know, funny to me, his next book was The 8th Habit.
Yeah. Well, he'd run out of the 7, so
he had to go make some more money. No, but I love the 8th habit is the speed. Everything at the speed of trust. You can't move without trust.
Trust is. I think about that from an organization. Well, from a marriage and an organization perspective, when my emotional bank account is really high with Michelle, my wife, man, she lets me do about anything.
Yeah.
When I have drained that, everything becomes suspect. You know, what's your agenda? What's your motive? What are you after here?
Yeah.
And I can move in my, in my business and leadership when my team trusts me. But if my team's looking at me like, what's in this for him? I can't move at the same speed.
The thing I loved about the 8th habit too is just that, maybe this is part of the maturity continuum for me, but I've noticed if you choose these 7 habits and you choose to make them a part of your life, and you find someone who also wants to do that, present company included, there is this trust that happens between the two of you too, where you see a motivation to get better every day, not to just be a winner in a winner-loser world, but to get better, to move towards both the private and the public win for everyone.
There's actually a book. I think Stephen wrote it, but it could have been his son. I'm not positive. You can look it up on Amazon, but it is actually called The Speed of Trust.
Yeah.
It's on my
shelf
at home. I have it at home and have read it. It's just, it's profound.
Yeah.
When you realize, when you go into an organization and your staff is just, they're just griping about everything you do. maybe you're reading
Trust problem.
Yeah, maybe there's a trust problem. Read at the speed of trust. So,
man, this has been a good conversation. It reminds me of a word that you and I heard this week that I can't get out of my head. The word is interruptible.
Your mom came up with that, and I like that.
I think she heard it somewhere, but she's the first person that said it to me. But the idea that we would live our lives in a way that's interruptible, that at any moment we would hold things loosely enough to be able to realize that there's something better. And it's when we become uninterruptible in our lives that we start to get angry, we start to get selfish, that we start to get lonely. And I think maybe the call at the end of this thing is just to say, if you found yourself in a moment in your life where you're uninterruptible, it is your choice to be interrupted. And maybe it's Stephen that needs to interrupt your life.
That's a word. That's a word. I think I loved when you told me that Claudia had mentioned that to you. That's a word you should write down.
Yeah.
What does it mean in your life to be interruptible? I've been thinking about it ever since you said that to me, because we have a tendency to go on autopilot.
Yeah. It's a book like this that interrupts the daily habits and creates some healthy ones in your life. And we hope you've heard something today. Go out to franklincovey.com. You can see, we're not getting any kick off of this, believe me. Go out to Amazon, find Covey stuff. There is nothing that will give you that interruption, that good interruption in your life more if you have not been through the 7 habits than Stephen Covey stuff.
Couldn't agree more, John.
Hey, thanks for listening today. Appreciate you getting better with us every day, and hope you heard something today that happens in your life, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening.